What's up everyone, welcome back to a brand new video on Lexus. I'm actually really excited that I'm able to get this video out. I'm going to vent my frustrations to what has been going on. So one of my USB ports on my laptop now no longer doesn't work, which means I can't use my webcam and I cannot use my microphone at the exact same time anymore. But with a bit of screaming and raging and broken mouses later, I think I've found a way around it, but we're going to see how it goes. If you do notice a difference in the quality of the video, that will be why. And I'm going to tinker it a little bit by bit, hopefully going to find a natural way of doing it, or it might even improve a video, who knows. But today we've got our Premier League predictions from 20th to 1st. I do this every single year. I love to see your guys' predictions for the Premier League as well, from 1st to 20th. It's always a really big amount of enjoyment, I find, with our predictions, and ultimately we're all here to laugh at our attempts of trying to predict the whole table, and it's always going to be a lot of fun. As always, please don't take what I say too seriously. I'm just here doing the best that I can to predict the sides, and knowing me, I'll probably get most of these wrong anyway. I didn't do too badly last year, but it can only go downhill from here. So if you guys enjoy what you see, please smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. Please do hit the subscribe button too, and please share the channel as well. But without any further ado, let's start unveiling my Premier League predictions one by one. Coming rock bottom in my table, probably a little bit predictable, is Leicester City. This is really mostly down to the fact that they've got a big points deduction already that they're going to have to try and overcome. They've also lost some big quality in their squad, including their manager and Kieran Dewsbury, who are all to Chelsea. So they've really got a lot to do to try and convince me that they are going to be able to survive at least one more season in the Prem. Steve Cooper as a manager, I don't mind, but I don't think he's the most inspiring of appointments that they really could have got, to be quite honest. Pre-season's been a bit patchy, but I'm trying not to base my views on pre-season too much. It's more or less seeing, can they have the longevity to survive and go through all the tough situations. Honestly, if they start quite poorly with that points deduction looming, I think it will affect the players mentally a lot more. If they start strong and get rid of the points deduction like that, there's a good chance they could catch up with most of the sides actually fighting down near the bottom of the table. We saw that actually quite often with the bottom three last year, considering how very few points they scored. But honestly, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a bit too much of an uphill task for Leicester, unfortunately. But I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'd love to see them get a couple of seasons back in the Premier League, because they're always a delight to watch. Coming up next in my table is probably my most bold shout, but I've got Brentford to finish down in 19th place. So I'm actually not predicting all three newly promoted teams to go straight back down. I think that's what a lot of people are predicting, based on the fact that last year had really good expectations for the Championship sides based on the quality they ensured the year before they went up, but ultimately fell flat when it got to the Premier League. Honestly, I think it's such a rarity to see all three newly promoted teams go straight back down that I don't think we'll get 2 years in a row. I think it only actually happened one other time in around 2009, 2010, where we saw all three newly promoted sides go straight back down from getting promoted to the Championship. So it's a rarity, and I'm trying to make that clear. And I think a team like Brentford will be a side that will be around that region of the table. Now, Ian Toney is a very interesting conundrum. If he really wants to play his football and he really wants this move, which he's kind of making it clear at the moment, he should be playing out of his skin to try and get that move guaranteed. But what if it had the reverse effect and he actually almost went on strike in a way before he gets that move? A little bit of a Johnny Rowe factor, but we ensued with Norwich quite recently, which I don't condone at all. I feel like you should be playing as much football as you can, despite getting a move, tomorrow or next year, for instance. So I personally think the squad is not quite strong enough for me, but is going to convince me that they're going to kick on from where they finished. I thought last season they had a really concerning period of when they didn't, were winning, basically little to no games. Tony came back and gave them a little bit of a lift, but ultimately they ended the season pretty disappointingly in 16th. And I think it's going to be a very similar season, but I think the worst factor of that will be is that if Tony does go at one point they don't adequately replace, I think it's going to be a struggle for goals. And personally, I think it's going to be a real dogfight with the newly promoted sides in this Brentford side. And if Brentford do not take advantage of that, then I think they will subconsciously walk into relegation. But it's been a delight watching Brentford in the Prem, and I would love to see them, with even more seasons because they really do, I think, punch above their weight, and I think people should give them the respect for doing so. But for me, unfortunately, I think their small stint in the Premier League is going to end this season. Let me know what you think in the comments. In 18th, I've got Southampton. That's right, guys. I've done the unthinkable of predicting Ipswich to survive a Premier League season. But I cannot lie, this part of the table was so difficult for me. And I see Southampton and Ipswich being really, really close in quality. And actually, I think they'll both have very similar seasons in their own right. I might as well talk about them together, to be fair. So I think they're going to have similar seasons. So Southampton, I think, are really giving me a strong vibe of what Burnley are going to bring, what they did bring from last year. I think they can bring an exciting brand of football to the Premier League, but is Russell Martin going to stray away from potentially being a bit too naive in his ways and is going to expand more options for Southampton to potentially be a little bit more defensive when protecting the lead? That's the only thing for me where I'm not too sure if Russell Martin is going to get that instantly. And one thing I will say with that, which I think could give him a chance, if Russell Martin does depart, I actually think the board would do so. I think the board are very keen to get the Southampton side staying up in the Premier League. And it's going to be close. It's not going to be easy because they've not made too many moves, but I think the moves they made were sensible. But so have Ipswich's. They've also made some really sensible signings, keeping basically the bulk of the squad. And the reason that I think Southampton and Ipswich will do better than Leicester is that they've managed to keep the core amount of their squad. Now, I think there's a lot more interest in Southampton players at the moment, Kyle Walker-Peters being one of them, where if he does go, I think it's going to impact them there. And I think the big factor for me is I think Southampton are going to be more set in their ways of their style of play. Ipswich, I can actually see them being a bit more tactically various in the way that they like to go. I know that they like a style of play, but I think Kieran McKenna is astute enough to figure that out. But I have to predict one of them to go down, and I'm going to go for Southampton. I mean, ultimately, if I said Ipswich would go down, I'd be fired. So I couldn't predict Ipswich to go down, really, but certainly it's going to be a really close call. Just a very quick piece on Ipswich. I'm not blinded by the fact that I actually think it's going to be a really tough season for Ipswich. I think the signings they've made are clever for their part and would actually be really beneficial if they did get relegated this season and would have to attack the Championship again. But there's a lot of players in that squad will have to really prove themselves in this level, and I do think that is a small risk, but I have full faith in the style of play. I actually think the signings they've made actually improve the squad quite significantly, but more importantly in their depth. And I think with the style of football that McKenna likes to play, I think we're going to see a lot often these players pick up injuries within the Championship. Despite it being a 46-game season, I think at times some of the players have been able to kind of hold back a bit because a lot of the times when the style of play has actually given them in a bit of a privileged position. In the Prem, I think they're going to have to bring that style of play almost throughout the whole match, and that's going to be a really big toll for this Ipswich side. And just with the sheer mental strength and the short turnaround of time, it's going to be a really big battle. But I think by the skin of their teeth, and I think it could literally go to the final day, I think they will stay up. And that'll be absolutely unbelievable. And Ipswich fans will take that. They are not expecting to, really attack the Premier League by storm. But they would take another season for the Premier League easily. I mean, to get back-to-back promotions is big. And actually, as a note, the last two sides that went through back-to-back promotions from League One to the Prem, both of them survived for at least one season. So Ipswich will have to see if they can follow in that trend. Next in my table is going to be Everton. Now, Everton are going to be some teams picked to go down potentially, but I personally think under Sean Dyche, I think they will stay up. They have had a big loss in Onana in that midfield, and that really does concern me. If Onana stayed on, I actually probably would have imagined Everton could have pushed on a bit. But I think, once again, there's going to be lots of difficulties, and they've really kind of put themselves in a position with financial fair play restrictions. So as a result, they've had to sell some players just to kind of make sure that they balance the books a bit. So this is going to be a tough situation for Everton, but I think they've got enough grit. I think they've got enough firepower in that squad, and I think they've got enough experience to survive against the teams around them there. They're going to make sure that they don't get relegated when they're moving into their new stadium next year. So I think it's an absolute, mission that they must stay in this league. And I think they will. I actually think they will be able to find enough form on their feet and just pick up enough crucial wins against the teams around them that will allow them to get at least one other season in the Prem. Next in my table is Bournemouth. Now, this is quite a bit drop from Bournemouth, going from 12th to 15th place, but I still think 15th is a respectable position for this Bournemouth side. And ultimately, if they're losing someone as big as Solanke, you'd think, right, well, they need to potentially go down, fighting relegation. But I think Iriola is so good as a manager. I think him alone will get Bournemouth in a very, very safe position within the Premier League. It's just a question now whether they can potentially just only have a slight drop-off or maybe even kick on and improve. Personally, I don't think so. I think the outgoings are certainly going to cause some issues. I think the ingoings in the moment are feeling a bit unproven players for me personally. And I think right now, I think a lot of these sides, for the fact that the transfer window still being open right to the end of August, my table could look very, very different in opinion when the transfer window ends. But based on how the squads look right now, I think Bournemouth will be around this area of the table. But I think it will be a safe 15th rather than a 15th place and narrowly avoiding the drop. Because I think Bournemouth as a whole are going to look pretty comfortable going into the Premier League in the next couple of seasons, especially with someone like Iriola in charge. Coming in 14th is Nottingham Forest. Now, this is quite a good improvement from Nottingham Forest, jumping from 17th up to 14th. I mean, it's not a huge improvement, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And I do like their squad. Their manager, I'm not so sure. I don't really particularly enjoy his style of football per se, but I think when he did come in, when he needed to come in, he has proven to me that he can deliver the goods and he can get Nottingham Forest into a decent position. The question is, can those players kick on and really strive for making those improvements? I think they've got a nice run of games actually at the start of the season where if they could pick up some points really early on, that already gives them a really good cushion from the sides potentially trying to pick their place off. So I think they could have a decent run of momentum, and I think it's now just going to be seen if the players are going to get the confidence from that momentum to kick on and to maybe pick up the points that they maybe weren't expecting in the past couple of seasons or so. So 14th for Forest, I think it's a decent position for them, and I think it's certainly a realistic position for them as well. Next in my table is Wolves. Now, this is a big one because they've lost recently some big outgoings. Kilman and Neto going to Premier League rivals is quite devastating for Wolves. But likewise with the Bournemouth factor, I'm a big fan of their manager, Gary O'Neill, and I think even again, if he loses half of his squad, I just think there's something within the way that he operates as a manager that the squads like and bond with. And I think overall, I think he could do just about enough to unite this squad together. I think we are going to see some more ingoings for this Wolves side. I think potentially the sales could have been a bit similar to the Everton situation where they're trying to balance their books to make sure they don't breach profit and sustainability rules and financial fair play. So naturally, I think we were going to see it to happen for Wolves. I think especially in their promoted season, they spent quite a lot of money to try and stay themselves in the Prem. They're still in the Prem at the moment, so they've done really, really well with their investment over a couple of years that they've been in there. And I think, again, despite the outgoings, I think the players that they've got now, I've got so much experience in the Prem now, and personally, I don't see them going down there, but I don't think they'll improve on 13th. I think it's more likely that they're going to finish lower down than 13th rather than up 13th personally. So that's my prediction on Wolves. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, because I think Wolves is going to be an interesting team to predict this year. Next in my table is Fulham. So Fulham, I've got predicting them into 12th. That's a very similar position to what they finished from last season. So I don't really think there'll be too much change. There is a major outgoing in Polinia. I absolutely get that. And I think there could potentially be more being linked with a move away as well. But Fulham been recently quite busy within the transfer window as well. Smith Rowe was, I think, a really, really big transfer that they managed to obtain. And I do think they'll be eyeing up a couple more eye-catching transfers as well, personally. So I think that is a big reason for it. I do think Fulham as a squad went through a bit of a pigs and troughs kind of season where they would have good form and then they would have poor form followed by that. I suspect Rodrigo Muniz to have another big season as well. If he can hit the ground running and get some really good goals in a good long stretch of games, I think he could be a really big player for this Fulham side and can really allow them to kick on. And I think, again, likewise with the Forest factor, I think with Fulham, if they can get a good run together, I think naturally the players will thrive off that confidence and they could really, really kick on. Because one thing I've seen about this Fulham side, they're really heavily underestimated, but you should never underestimate them. They can really, really attack you when they really can. So I'm going to go for Fulham 12th. Could maybe be a bit wrong on that one. They could finish a lot lower, but I'm thinking that they're going to be around that region of the table. But let me know what you think in the comments. Next in my table is Brighton. So I think Brighton have now kind of given me the vibe that they're going to be in that safe mid-table region of the table now. And 11th, I think, will be right around where they would finish. And it was near the region where they finished from last season as well. No De Zerbi anymore, brand new manager, but I'm a big fan of him. Based on what I've seen him with his comments, but I've seen him in post-match occasions, I'm a big fan of what he offers with that side as well. And I think this Brighton team as a whole are going to be a side that will be there and thereabouts. There will be no European football for this Brighton side, so potentially that may help them. But I think just still with the new manager getting used to the league, I think it's going to take a season for them just to get used to whatever system that he's going to implement onto them. And I can really see them being a good threat next season if they can potentially, keep a lot of their players on. But even with that, they replace their players so well. I'm a really big fan of their transfer strategy all the time. They are a team that don't panic under the pressure, and they just know exactly how to keep getting those shrewd signings. So I'm a big fan of this whole Brighton squad thing. So I really do think that they'll attack the league well again. And I think 11th may be a decent position finish. But let me know, Brighton fans, if you were taking 11th place, because I have a feeling that now you're around the top 10 quite consistently. I think you'll be almost sniffing for European football now these days. Next in my prediction is Crystal Palace. Now, this is one I'm quite nervous to predict because there's so much movement with Palace. Eze always gets interest. They've already lost to Elise, who they've managed to replace with Ismail Assar, who I don't think he's as good as, Elise, I've got to be honest. But he can definitely be a decent player on this day. We've seen that with Watford. But Mark Gay is the big one. If he stays at Palace and they keep their back line that they practically had from last season, I think Palace could break the 50-point mark, which they've been aiming for since they've been newly promoted. I mean, they've been promoted now for over a decade, and they've still not achieved more than 40 points in the season. That's insane. By now, if you've been promoted this long, you feel you would have at least one season where you would really, really punch above your weight and get around that 50 points. Palace always deliver regarding the 40-point region. So I really do think this could be their year that they could break it, but they really cannot afford to lose any more because Elise is already big enough as it is. If they lose any more, I think it's going to be quite tough. But I like their manager, Oliver Glasner. I do think he will still get them to play that really exciting brand of football. And they ended the season like a house of fire last time. If they've got the confidence and they can carry that on, I'm going to be really excited by this Palace side. So why not? Let's predict Palace to finish 10th and hit 50 points exactly. Let's see if this happens. Next prediction might be seen as a shock, but personally, it's not a massive shock to me. I've got Chelsea in 9th, and I think pre-season has certainly played a factor of me not feeling confident in this Chelsea side. I think they're going to get more players in, but they signed so many players. And the two that potentially give me some sort of excitement, in fact, well, let's say three, is Gui from Barcelona. I quite like what he's doing at the moment, but he's not one that really gets me excited. He'll be a good one for the future, but he's not one for me that's really making me excited. The one that's really made me think, okay, that's a Chelsea signing I expect, is Neto. But maybe I need to reevaluate my expectations a little bit and thinking, well, Chelsea are certainly not the big juggernaut as they are anymore. They've got an ownership with a scattergun transfer approach where ultimately they are just buying as many players as they can and trying to make the biggest profit out of their homegrown talent. Ultimately, I don't like what's going on with the board, and I really do not like the approach that they're taking with Chelsea Football Club. All I can hope is that someday they may stop splashing the cash and getting so many players into that squad that they can gel without any issues, because it felt like last season we were getting somewhere with Pochettino, but then ultimately they got rid of him, and I think it was down to a disagreement. I don't necessarily think it was down to performance. contrary to lots of media reports. So I do think with Maresca coming in, I liked him at Leicester. I'm not sure I'm really going to like him as a Chelsea manager, unfortunately. And I just don't think a lot of it is his fault, to be honest. I just think he's been left with a really difficult situation caused by the mess from the ownership. So I think it's going to be a turbulent season for Chelsea. I don't really see things being particularly smooth, and they never are with Chelsea anymore, and I've gone to accept that. So I'm going to go ninth. Probably a bit unpopular, but I'm going to have to try and just put someone there. And for me, out of the 9 other sides left, I think Chelsea could be the one that doesn't do so well. So it's a shame, really, but I'm going to put them in that position. Coming up next in my Premier League table is West Ham. That's right, I've predicted them to finish in 8th place. Very similar finish from last season. And I think a lot of people would think with the transfer window, West Ham are going to do so much better than 8th. Personally, I'm still holding my judgment on Lopetegui. I think he did an okay job at Wolves, and I think he's done all right, really, with his previous managerial appointments in Spain. But with his West Ham side, I think a lot of pressure is going to be on him because the transfers they made have been unbelievable. They've been unbelievable signings from West Ham. I mean, who would have thought that West Ham would have got Nicholas Füllkrug? I certainly would not have predicted that based on the Euros he's had. So I really am liking a lot about West Ham, but I don't think their style of football is going to change too much from David Moyes, and I think the change of manager really was motivated with the brand of football. So I don't really think the West Ham fans are really going to get what they wish for in that regard. But if results improve on the pitch, I think they will allow Lopetegui to be forgiven, really, with his style of play. But I'm really, really excited. I cannot lie. I'm so excited to see what this West Ham side is going to offer. And I really do think it'll be interesting. And the fact there's no European football, I think will help them as well. So I'll go for 8th place and a slight improvement from last year. Coming up next in my predictions is Manchester United. I don't think they're going to get top 6 this time. I do like the transfers. They literally recently got Azori, and they managed to get De Ligt quite recently as well. 2 really big signings they got within a short space of time. Unfortunately, though, Yoro, one of their signings, is already injured. Højlund's going to be out for a lot of the season as well. And I just think they've got a big injury problem within the club, and I think it's something that's got to be investigated. I mean, Chelsea still really have this issue as well. And we either put it down to the player or potentially down to the fitness methods that have been performed as well. I do think there's a real problem there. I do think overall their squad's going to be a little bit stronger. But with European football, I actually would have, I think actually Manchester United would have preferred not to have European football. I think having so many games and just having very few players that were fit really did make things difficult for them. So I actually think it would be a little bit of a blessing and a curse for them winning that FA Cup, which granted them that Europa League qualification. So I do think it's going to be a 7th place finish for Manchester United. I don't really see things improving too much, but yeah, I really do think it's going to be a bit of a nothingy season, really. I can't really see them kicking on and improving and setting the world alight, unfortunately. We've made it to the top 6, and now I've got Aston Villa. So I am backing them for back-to-back European places, which I think could be quite brave. Aston Villa have got Champions League. I think that's really going to make things quite intense for them. We saw how much it affected Newcastle, and they barely were there in the Champions League, honestly. But I really, really do back their manager, Unai Emery. I think the additions they've got in are huge. Losing Douglas Luiz to Juventus, potentially could be a damaging loss, but again, they're bringing people in, and I'm really liking their strategy. I like the addition of Ian Maatsen in their back line, for instance. So I do think they've made so many good moves that counter the players that they've lost as well. I back Unai Emery to get the squad drilled. I think it'll be a slight drop off. I think it's going to be very difficult for back-to-back Champions League places per se. But I think 6th is very achievable, and I do think this Aston Villa side will do just about enough to get there. So it'll be a really, really good couple of years to be an Aston Villa fan. Just missing out on Champions League is Newcastle. Now, I won't lie, 5th and 4th were very, very close, but I, in the end, kind of thought that Newcastle would just miss out. Reason being, I just think it's personally really going to be down to the quality of a squad, but also whether if they are going to have a fit enough squad for enough of the season. The fact they got no European football, I think is going to help them. I think it was a bit damaging for them to miss out on European football based on the investment that's gone in. And a bit of unrest, I think, in the backroom staff as well. Amanda Staveley no longer really operating part in her role per se. So I do think things are certainly turning up the pressure within Newcastle at the moment. You feel that something is brewing. But I think as long as they see a markable improvement, I think this is going to be another good season and satisfying season for Newcastle. Champions League, I think, will be preferable. But I think if they have to take one small step to take one giant leap in the next year, I think Newcastle fans will not mind that. So we made it to the top four. So fourth place for me is going to be Spurs. I do think their squad is progressing. I think a lot of the players in that squad have learned a very harsh lesson last season. And I do think there was some really positive parts of their last season as well. And I think it's difficult to gloss over the positives considering how good they started and then how poorly they kind of ended it. But I do think the investments that Postecoglou has made are more his signings. I'm really seeing this as a more recognisable Ange Postecoglou side. And I think naturally they're going to thrive a lot better. And I'm a big fan of the Solanke transfer. I am really thinking now they've got a real distinct vocal point up front. I think that's really, really going to help things for Spurs going forward. So I'm, finding a lot of positives in Spurs' transfer strategy. And I think overall, I think the players that they've selected as new transfers are smart additions. I think they can gel in very, very quickly as well. And overall, I just think their ingoings have actually improved the quality of the squad. I think Postecoglou, now knowing 1 year of the Prem, I think he will not be as tactically naive as he was. And I think he'll certainly get a bit more consistency in the Spurs side. And I think that will just about be enough to get them into that fourth place. And that'll be Champions League football for Spurs. Making it to the top three, third place for me is Liverpool. Now, I love the fact that Arne Slot has literally walked in and thought, I've hit the jackpot. I've got, I think, already a perfectly complete squad. And there's been very little transfer activity because of that. And I'm really, really like that. I'd like, the fact that he's just almost kind of sitting back saying, right, let's see how you're going to perform with my system. Are things going to be as good, improve, or worsen? Ultimately, I do like the fact that he has a lot of trust already in that squad. And why wouldn't you when they've had the success that they've had with Jurgen Klopp? So I do think there's lots of positives still with Liverpool. In terms of outgoings going, they've lost some experience in the back line with Matip going. They've recently lost Carvalho to Brentford, which I think could be a bit of a dangerous sort of transfer. I mean, he was already linked and ultimately, Liverpool held firm quite originally, just trying to keep him on. And he featured quite a fair bit in pre-season. It looked like Arne Slot really liked him, but he has gone to Brentford now. And I think that could potentially be the one deficit that I can put into their squad. But other than that, I think this Liverpool squad is as good as gold as it normally is. And personally, I think it might take a bit of time for Arne Slot's new system to come in, and it might, mean that Liverpool start off pretty slowly. But I think they'll be one of those teams that really grows into the season. So personally, I think Liverpool will finish third. And here's the big reveal that you have been waiting for. So second place, in my opinion, is going to be the same top two as it has been for the past couple of seasons now. I've gone Arsenal second. But I really think this year really could be the year that Arsenal could go first and I could get this wrong. And ultimately, I actually probably won't have too many complaints despite being a Chelsea fan. I would like to see Man City dethroned. I actually would rather see Man City dethroned than Arsenal win a Premier League in a lifetime where I can remember them winning it. Because the last time that they won Premier League, I was a toddler. So it has been a while since they've won the Premier League. And we do like to remind them for it. But we cannot deny the fact their squad is really knocking on the door for it. And I really do think they've got a chance. I just think when it comes to the crunch moments, I'm wondering if Man City just still have that experience that they can still pull through a really unbelievable unbeaten run. And personally, I think that is really going to be the difference, as little as that. So that means I have been boring and I've predicted Manchester City to win the league. I mean, their 115 breaches charge has been pushed forward to September. So I don't know, maybe that could have an influence. I don't know. There's so much unpredictability regarding the 115 breaches. But putting that aside, and I'm just going to make the scenario in my head that they get cleared, I still think they'll win. I really do think they'll win still. Losing Alvarez is quite a loss for them. but he wasn't even starting. And I do think this Manchester City side is still just as strong as ever. Their depth is insane. The money that they raise is unbelievable. And they'll just probably get another player tomorrow and prove to be just as good as Julian Alvarez always was. So as predictable as it is and as boring as it sounds, I think, again, Man City are going to win it. And this will be the first time a Premier League side has won the Premier League 5 times in a row. My jealousy is unmatched, but Man City have ultimately earned it. They've been a joy to watch throughout their dynasty, and it hurts, but ultimately they have played some scintillating football, and I think we're going to see more of the same for this season too. So that's going to wrap it up, guys, for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please smash the like button if you did enjoy. Please do hit the subscribe button if you're not done so. Please also share the channel too. That really helps as well. Please also leave your Premier League table predictions in the comments down below. I'll be very interested to know what you guys are thinking as well, whether you agree with me with Ipswich surviving. I mean, I'm probably not going to see too many people agree on that, but someone has to back them, and I'm going to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary. So in this video, and as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.